In 2010, Bill Gates and the Gates Foundation declared 2010 to 2020 the decade of vaccines. And that's when they were determined to give every child, there's an organization in the US called Every Child by Two, meaning that they need to get multiple doses of 10 vaccines by the time they're 2 years of age. And the decade of vaccines was to make sure that this really happened. And why does this happen? It's because of the side effects, short of autism that's clear out here or death, are asthma, allergies, eczema, ADD, ADHD, insulin-dependent diabetes, all kinds of bowel diseases, all kinds of neurological complications, seizure disorders, mental disabilities, and then insulin-dependent diabetes, cancer. It's to make children are nothing more than a product to them. And it's, yes, about the money, but more than just the money of itself on the front end, it's to make them be a customer for life.
Yeah.
So if you get these children chronically ill by the time they're 2 to 3 years of age, insulin-dependent diabetes, ADD, ADHD, heart disease, liver conditions, renal failure, all of these things, then their parents will do anything to try to get them better, which the pharmaceutical industry and the medical industry really has no intent of getting you better. The doctors are there to manage your disease, not to get you well and get you off of those drugs. It's to manage your disease and manage your drugs. And the more side effects you have from the drugs you're on, the more drugs that you get. So the idea from the pharmaceutical industry perspective was, well, instead of just now we've got customers that are 40, 50, and 60 years old that need blood pressure medications and maybe surgeries and stuff like that. Let's start young. Let's start capturing these children at 1 or 2 years of age and make them break their immune systems, crush them so that they will always be a customer for life for one of our products. That is the goal.
And, I hope everybody is really hearing, what's being said right now. I mean, this is not about health. This is not about improving health. This is a scam. It is so criminal and diabolical. I hardly have words for it. Jail, life in prison would be too good for these people.
Dr. Sherri Tenpenny is an osteopathic medical doctor, an educator, an internationally sought-after speaker, and frequent guest on radio and TV. She is the author of the book Saying No to Vaccines, a resource guide for all ages, as well as a contributing author to several other books, including Food and Nutrients in Disease Management. Dr. Tenpenny is a leading advocate for vaccine education and has devoted over 20 years to research, document, and expose the harms associated with vaccines. She is dedicated to educating parents on why they should just say no to vaccines. She's also the founder of the Tenpenny Integrative Medical Center, a clinic located near Cleveland, Ohio, which provides a natural, holistic approach to getting well and getting off prescription medication. In 2021, Dr. Tenpenny created a webinar whereby she educates people on the 20 mechanisms of injuries, how COVID-19 injections can make you sick or even kill you. We are so grateful that Dr. Tenpenny is a voice of reason in these critical times and that she is able to share her wealth of knowledge with us. This interview was pre-recorded, so I invite you to sit back, make yourselves comfortable as we enjoy the conversation between Tanya and Dr. Sherri Tenpenny.
Well, thank you, Heather. It's so good to have you on the show, Dr. Tenpenny. You and I have met a couple of times. I've had the honor and privilege of being on the happy hour. You are a woman of such incredible faith. I've been inspired by you, and I know that our viewers and many people are just so grateful for the work that you've been doing. The last 3 years of so-called COVID have been devastating to many, but early on, you already had a very good idea that this was an agenda and that it was going to be causing a whole lot of harm. So you started speaking out very early, and you started talking, about the consequences of the jab. And then through this, and I know through listening to other interviews that I've heard, is that throughout your history as a child, you weren't in a family that had been vaxxed. You went to medical school. There wasn't a lot of conversation about it. Through medical school, as we were talking pre-show, and maybe we'll start the show off with that, and we'll talk about how many vaccines, immunizations typically a child used to have and where we're at today. They're wanting to vax from cradle to grave, and the pharmaceutical companies are making a whole lot of money. And I think the one positive thing, and I think there's not many positives to come out of this whole pandemic, this scandemic, but the one positive thing is it's caused us to look at our government with different eyes. And it's caused us to look at the pharmaceutical companies with different eyes and different knowledge and understanding and wisdom, and to really put into perspective that they don't have our best interest at heart, and that they're in a money-making business, and that seems to be that's all that's important to them. So I just want to hand the floor over to you. Let's have a bit of a conversation, about the immunizations and where we're at.
Well, thank you so much, Tanya. Thank you so much for having me on your show. I really appreciate being here today. Just in brief, I grew up in a chiropractic family that my grandfather, my father, 3 uncles and 2 cousins were chiropractors. And that's how I wanted to be an osteopath. And, American trained osteopaths are medical doctors. They have every they have every right, every privilege. They do everything from a medical doctor. But at being an osteopath, that means you also have the ability to do musculoskeletal medicine, similar to, but not identical to a chiropractor. So an American trained osteopath, because I know osteopaths are different in Canada and the UK and Australia and France and places like that. But American trained osteopathic physicians are medical doctors. They're equivalent to an MD. And I always say it's like an MD plus, because we've got all the training that an MD does, but we also have all the training that a chiropractor does, even though our techniques are a little bit different. So growing up with that, I was not vaccinated as a kid. My dad was like, nope, we're not doing that. And when I was born, it was about the time that the polio vaccine was coming out. And so many reports in the chiropractic literature was showing that kids were becoming paralyzed from the shot. So my mom and my dad said, we're not going to do that. And so I'm one of the probably rare people in my age group that has never had any vaccines at all. And so it's just the way that it is. And I'm so grateful for that, because I think I'm super healthy because of it. And then I got involved in the vaccine industry per se, because I went to a conference in September of 2000 and attended the National Vaccine Information Center meeting in Washington, D.C. And I spent 4 days listening to doctors and lawyers and parents of unvaccinated kids, parents of severely vaccine injured children, scientists, for 4 days listening to them talking about problems with vaccines. And I thought, I don't know much about that. By that time, I graduated from medical school in 1985. This was September of 2000. So 15 years later, I had been the director of a level 2 trauma center as an emergency medicine physician for 12 years. I started my clinic in Cleveland doing holistic medicine and integrative medicine in 1996. I thought, how did I miss this? I better go home and take a look into that. So when I went home, I thought, well, I'll start with the CDC documents. Let's see what they have to say. And when I started reading the papers, I said, this is really not good. I mean, there's nothing of substance here. So maybe I ought to read a little bit more. Well, a little bit more means I've spent now the last 23 years looking at problems associated with vaccines. I stopped counting around 45 or 50,000 hours worth of time that I put into it. It's pretty much my calling, my God's advocacy program that he put on me. He said, here, take this and run with it. And about the only time that I'm not talking about vaccines or something to do that's related to that scenario is when I'm seeing patients, because I still see patients one day on Wednesday, every other week in the office, and when I'm asleep. Other than that, this is what I'm doing, getting out there the information, showing people that vaccines are not safe. They've never been proven to be safe. They don't keep you from getting sick, and they definitely cause harm. When I graduated from medical school in 1984, and started in the practice of medicine in emergency medicine in 1985, there were only 3 vaccines. There was only measles, mumps, and rubella. There was only DPT, which is diphtheria, pertussis, and tetanus, and polio. So there were only in each one of those, like measles, mumps, and rubella. That's three vaccines in one injection. Diphtheria, tetanus, pertussis. That's 3 vaccines in one injection. And the polio vaccine has 3 viruses in it. So you were getting about 9 antigens injected into your body. And now, fast forward to where we are. So we didn't really talk about it much. There wasn't much to say. They certainly weren't talking about any problems, or they weren't talking about any injuries. We didn't know anything about the ingredients, and only the kids in my class that were interested in pediatrics were paying much attention to what was happening with vaccines. But now, fast forward to where we are today, and we now have children now get multiple doses of 16 or 17 vaccines, depending on how you count them. And they get over 200 antigens injected. Remember, I said in 85 there were 9, and now there's more than 200. In America, on the American schedule, if they get every shot, they will get 72 doses of vaccine by the time they're 18, and they will have had almost 13 milligrams of aluminum injected, and over 500 milligrams of 500 micrograms of mercury. Because the aluminum when they started taking the mercury out of the shots, they replaced it with aluminum. So it's a lot. It's really a lot.
This is terrifying, right? And parents, you know, they, myself included, I have 2 kids, they're 27 and 29 now. And it was when they were young, it was just at that point where parents were starting to wonder. But I don't remember anybody really discussing it with me. And it was the thing to go in and have your child immunized. Terenzio, could you bring up the graph so that people could see the chart? And just so that you can get a visual of what this looks like. So in Canada, the shots were I think it was 4 doses, and you look at that in the 1950s, and take a look in 2022. This image is from Vaccine Choice Canada, and we've been informed that you can take that 72 doses and add 36 more doses of the COVID shot. And then, Terenzio, if you could go to Dr. Tenpenny's chart, and Dr. Tenpenny, if you can explain what this is.
Yeah, this comes from UNICEF and the World Health Organization. And it says on here, by 2030, the immunization agenda aims to reduce by 50% the number of children missing out on vaccines, to achieve 90% coverage of essential vaccines, which they consider all of them essential for childhood and adolescence, and introduced 500 new vaccines in low and middle income countries. That's put out by the Immunization Agenda for 2030. There's IA 2030, all of the Artificial Intelligence 2030, and it's sponsored by the World Health Organization. So it's vaccination. There's a book that was written maybe 10, 15 years ago now. It was called Vaccination Nation. And I think that that's where we are. And, it's interesting that the World Health Organization still calls it immunization. I've spent 23 years trying to eliminate that word from vocabulary because we are not immunizing anything. Immunizing by definition means to make something immune and makes it so protected from getting those infections. What we're doing is vaccinating. We're injecting foreign matter into our bodies and somehow thinking that magically does good things for us. It's vaccinating. It's not immunizing. We're not taking our kids to get them immunized. We're taking them to be injected with foreign matter called vaccinating.
Mm-hmm. And that's causing them a great deal of harm. I know that I've seen other charts, and for instance, what was it, in 1980, there was something like 1 in 10,000 children, 1 in 10,000 would have autism. And then the last chart I have is, I think it's by 2016, 1 in 36 children have autism.
1 in 31
that's aside,
now.
It's how many?
1 in 31 in the US.
I mean, if this just doesn't terrify parents with all of the autoimmune and other ailments that children are having, we should have a complete stop on all immunizations of children. And you're living proof. I know many people whose parents chose that not to have them given the jab when they were children. Vaccinated.
And
Yeah. And so that's why I say the one thing good that's come out of COVID is the fact that this is causing us to question all things big pharma and, to question every initiative that the government has. And when you were just showing, when the chart was up regarding the UN-backed vaccines, 500, we know the big scandal that took place with Bill Gates to eliminate polio, because a lot of people that will say, oh, you anti-vaxxers, oh, now you're saying you don't want to have children vaccinated. They'll say, what about polio? Where would kids be if they didn't have the polio vaccine? So will you address that, please?
Yeah, almost everybody that's new to this topic always starts with, what about polio and what about smallpox? Which means when they start with that, it tells me they're at ground zero, meaning they know nothing. They've never spent any time at all looking into the conversation. They've never understood anything about what's going on with all of these shots. Polio was actually a gastrointestinal virus that was made, and what was happening with the paralysis was from a pesticide, from DDT. We know that, and even this, have been led to believe this is a multi-generational indoctrination, Tanya. I mean, the height of the polio epidemic, if you could call it that, was in 1953. So we're 70 years into this, 2 generations now, and still young people today in their 20s who are having families and having babies, that's the first thing they say is, well, what about polio? We did a great job of indoctrinating them to bring their children in to be injected with foreign matter out of the fear of polio. When actually the real numbers that actually come from the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, they publish a book every couple of years. It's called the Pink Book. And it goes through each one of the childhood illnesses. It goes through each one of the childhood vaccinations. And the numbers actually say that the number of people that were exposed to the polio virus, which, by the way, has been eliminated from the Western Hemisphere since 1994. We're still giving our children 3 to 4 injections of a vaccine to protect from a virus that literally doesn't exist. In 2022, there were only 28 cases of polio reported in the entire world, and most of them were in war-torn, impoverished countries, and it was identified in the stool, in the sewage, and when they actually analyzed the polio virus, it was a virus that came from the oral polio vaccine, not wild polio. So we're injecting our children with 4 and 5 doses to protect against a virus that doesn't even exist in the entire Western Hemisphere, hasn't since 1994. And back in the day, with the height of the polio epidemic, when it was the March of Dimes and all these different things, 98% of children and adults that were exposed to that enterovirus, referred to as polio, it's a polio virus, 98% had no illness whatsoever. It just passed through as a gastrointestinal. People thought they had like food poisoning or they ate something bad or something like that. And then they had a lifetime of immunity. Only 2% of people who were exposed had any more serious illness. And only 2% of that 2% ended up with paralysis. So 0.004% of people who were exposed. But we still see, every time we talk about polio, we see pictures of iron lungs. We see pictures of kids in bassinets that are little mini iron lungs. That was a polio unit. We see kids in braces. We have used those visual effects for more than 70 years to continue to get parents to be fearful of a virus that doesn't even exist in Western Hemisphere, and the symptoms were primarily caused by a pesticide.
Yeah, it has been a grand deception, and they've run their course though, and I'm hoping and praying that it will come to an end. The more that we can get the word out, and I just find it so important, to address specifically this issue today, because I have a daughter-in-law, and she works as an EA, and of course she's seen the effects of autism. And when you talk about 1 in 31 children, you are playing Russian roulette with your kids, with your precious babies, when you are going in and allowing them to put that vaccine into their arm, that toxic chemical, that toxic ingredient into your child's arm. And, to hear the truth and the facts, if we go back, there's this big eradicate, they're actually starting to promote it again, the UN and the WHO, eradicate polio. And it was 3 countries, the Congo and 2 others, where there was 0 polio, but it was only after them going in and eradicating it with this vaccine that there was a rise of polio again. And then if many people don't know about what happened, was it in India or Africa, with the 490,000 children, people that were paralyzed because of the polio vaccine that Bill Gates had developed?
Yeah, it was, 2 parts of that. Part of it was Africa, because they do these things called national immunization days, which they use the oral polio vaccine, which is the little drop. You'll see the pictures of them squirting the liquid underneath their tongue. That's a live virus that we stopped using in the United States, and I'm assuming in Canada somewhere around the same time, in about 2001 and 2002, because the only people that were coming down with any issues with paralysis were people who were exposed to the wild virus inside of the oral polio shot. So we went to the injectable polio shot. So when they would have these national immunization days, they will give polio and probably a tetanus shot to 400,000 or more children. They just march across the country. They get all these well-meaning volunteers who think they're doing great things for humanity, and they go and inject all of these kids, and then there's never any follow-up. It's never like a month later do they walk across the country in the same paths and go, wonder how many kids died, how many kids have autism, how many kids now have asthma, how many kids had seizures, how many kids there's never any follow-up to that. And when I was talking about India went through a period, this was maybe 2012, when they were declared by the World Health Organization to be polio free. They'd had all of these polio things, all of these things that had gone on. And then what started happening is they started seeing thousands, 50,000 or more kids developed something called non-polio acute flaccid paralysis, which means they were having paralysis in their limbs that we would have equated by pictures to polio, but it wasn't caused by polio. It was caused by a pesticide, or it was caused by some other some other virus, because there's at least 7 or 8 other viruses that can cause flaccid paralysis, which means just a limp limb that you can't do anything with. And in the first year after India was declared polio free, no more wild polio anywhere, because they had all of these oral polio vaccination campaigns. In the first year, there were 50,000 children who had acute flaccid paralysis by something else, more than ever was caused by the polio virus. And this acute flaccid paralysis is more deadly and more permanent than any of the transient types of paralysis that they saw with the wild polio viruses. So the cure is much worse than the disease.
It is so shocking, and I really want our viewers to absorb what Dr. Tenpenny is saying. We're trying to provide you information, but it's up to you. I mean, these are your children. These are our communities. These are our families that we're talking about right now. And within many of the third world countries as well, they go in there and they experiment on those people with whatever vaccine, that they have coming up next. And with the childhood immunization, is there other than money, and possibly, I can't understand why they would want to provide products that cause so much injury. The pharmaceutical companies are immune from it, but it's one thing with the COVID jab. Many people believe, and we're seeing it, that it's to decrease the world population. But with our children, when you get autism, that child is disabled. They do not function at a high level. There's a lot of funding that needs to go into the care of these children. And I just don't understand the purpose of it. You know, it's one thing to want to decrease and kill people, but another thing to have a society filled with disabled individuals. So,
Well, remember
how can
that
you?
autism is
Mhm.
if you think about vaccine injury, autism is at the far end. There's a whole lot of other things in terms of injury. Autism is one of the worst case scenarios, second only to death itself, of kids
Mhm.
that die from the shots. There's one step back from that. But what happens is that, in 2010, Bill Gates and the Gates Foundation declared 2010 to 2020 the decade of vaccines. And that's when they were determined to give every child, there's an organization in the US called Every Child by Two, meaning that they need to get multiple doses of 10 vaccines by the time they're 2 years of age. And the decade of vaccines was to make sure that this really happened. And why does this happen? It's because of the side effects, short of autism that's clear out here or death, are asthma, allergies, eczema, ADD, ADHD, insulin dependent diabetes, all kinds of bowel diseases, all kinds of neurological complications, seizure disorders, mental disabilities, and then insulin dependent diabetes, cancer. It's to make children are nothing more than a product to them. And it's, yes, about the money, but more than just the money of itself on the front end, it's to make them be a customer for life.
Yeah.
So if you get these children chronically ill by the time they're 2 to 3 years of age, insulin dependent diabetes, ADD, ADHD, heart disease, liver conditions, renal failure, all of these things, then their parents will do anything to try to get them better, which the pharmaceutical industry and the medical industry really has no intent of getting you better. The doctors are there to manage your disease, not to get you well and get you off of those drugs. It's to manage your disease and manage your drugs. And the more side effects you have from the drugs you're on, the more drugs that you get. So the idea from the pharmaceutical industry perspective was, well, instead of just now we've got customers that are 40, 50, and 60 years old that need blood pressure medications and maybe surgeries and stuff like that. Let's start young. Let's start capturing these children at 1 or 2 years of age and make them break their immune systems, crush them so that they will always be a customer for life for one of our products. That is the goal.
And, I hope everybody is really hearing, what's being said right now. I mean, this is not about health. This is not about improving health. This is a scam. It is so criminal and diabolical. I hardly have words for it. Jail, life in prison would be too good for these people. And one day justice is coming. There's a lot of us who are pursuing that. Bonnie Henry, our health officer, actually has worked with Bill Gates in injecting these children in third world countries. And she's been at the front of this assault against Canadians, along with our Dr. Tam, the federal health official. And so these people are not strangers to what's going on. It's not like they're naive. They know exactly what they're doing. And when children reach the age of 18 and they've had all of their shots, they then start campaigning on them to get the adult shots, the flu shots. And society, I believe the stat was around 10% of society were not vaxxed. And of course, they wanted to get that, I think it was 10%, they wanted to get it to 0%. And over COVID, pushing the vax, trying to give the impression, again, that they had society's best and their health, at the heart of all of this. But instead, that vaccine hesitancy is growing. And I'm just so happy about it. And the more information we get out. So when I said cradle to grave, this also includes the adults. They're now targeting individuals who never got vaccines in their childhood. They're now trying to target them and tell them they should, be vaccinated. There's shingles vaccinations, the flu shot, and one other shot that I've just becoming aware of is the tetanus shot. You go step on that rusty nail and they tell you, well, you better go and get a tetanus shot. This is one that, is so common for people to say, oh, I've got to go to the doctors and get a tetanus shot. Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, that's another one of those deeply ingrained indoctrination things we have, right? That anytime you get a cut, you better get a tetanus shot. I mean, I used to be an emergency medicine physician. Like I said, I was a board certified emergency medicine doc. I was the director of a level 2 trauma center for 12 years. And it was just amazing to me how many people you would see come in to get their tetanus shot when they cut their finger on a knife while washing dishes. So they were in warm, soapy water. Where is tetanus going to be in there? But boy, they cut themselves. They better go get a tetanus shot. I mean, it's a knee-jerk reflex. And tetanus is an anaerobic spore that is in dirt. Not every single particle of dirt, though, has that spore. The spore has to get into your body, into your finger or your foot. It has to be deeply embedded, and then it has to germinate to cause what we would call, and it releases something called tetanospasmin, which is it's a neurotoxin. It's one of the most potent neurotoxins in nature. And it causes you to have spasms of your muscles. And that's where the whole idea of tetanus being called lockjaw, because you would bite down really hard because you get these spasms in your muscles in your face. Well, first and foremost, for people to realize this, number one, it takes a long time from cut on your finger to develop tetanus if you're going to get it. It takes weeks. So there's no reason to drop everything in the world and get in your car and drive, 100 miles an hour to the emergency room, go screeching into the parking lot and running into the ER so that you can get your tetanus shot because you're going to get tetanus in the next 5 minutes. It doesn't work that way. If you've got an opportunity to really clean out that wound, if it's in your finger, I can remember when I was a kid, I grew up my dad was a chiropractor, but we grew up on a farm. And I can remember plenty of times my dad coming in from the barn that he had whacked open something on his hand, and he would run to the kitchen sink and he would turn on the water and he would squeeze his finger and he would stand there and say, make it bleed, make it bleed, make it bleed yes. with the water rushing over it, because the blood from the inside would be pushing out any particulate matter that may have gotten in there with the cut. And it would be bringing in good healing white blood cells into the wound while he's holding his finger underneath running water that is washing it out. But instead, what do? Oh, it's blood, cover it up. Don't look at it. Don't see it, smash it shut. It's just the opposite of what we should do because we've been trained to do that. And here's the third part is that in 2016, there was a really well done paper that came out that said if you've had 2 tetanus shots somewhere in your life, and most of the time people have had at least 3 because there's 3 tetanus shots in the pediatric schedule. So if you've had at least 2 somewhere in your life, those antibodies, they call them protective antibodies, which is another whole topic, but they have protective antibodies for a minimum of 60 years. So all this routine stuff of every time you get a cut, you need to get a tetanus shot, or it's been 10 years, you need to go in and get another tetanus shot. When nobody draws a blood test to see whether or not you need it, they could draw a blood level and order something called a titer test to see the level of antibodies in your blood to know whether or not you need any more tetanus shots. And hypertetanus, giving too many tetanus shots, there's a syndrome that goes along with that can cause arrhythmias and can cause high blood pressure and a long list of neurological conditions. So it's just a knee-jerk reflex thing that somebody set up and went, 10 years sounds good. Let's give one of these every 10 years, whether you need it or not.
This would be a good time to bring to people's attention as well about your dogs and your cats, because they're doing the same thing in the veterinary world, is that, they want your animal to come in and get its yearly shot, but you are in the same scenario, you are creating a toxic vessel. If you went and had a titer test done on your pup, you will find out that you do not need to yearly vaccinate. My sister has done a deep amount of research on this, and that all they need as a pup is their first shot, and they're good to go. And the rabies shot as well. Many dogs. I had one dog years ago, 20 years ago, and I thought I was doing the right thing, and it ended up becoming. It had this little bit of a vicious streak in him after that. And I dealt with that for 7 years. So, you know what? Pay attention, do some research. If you've got animals and you love them, stop vaccinating them, stop feeding this money train with your vet, go in and see your vet when you need to. But with the tetanus, back to that.
I wanted to look over,
okay.
I was looking over at the side, I got a screen over here, and I was looking at my calendar because just a couple of weeks ago, and I was looking at when it aired. It just aired on last Monday. We did an interview with Dr. Will Faulkner, Falconer, Falconer, who's a holistic veterinarian, and he only does homeopathy for years. He has a really interesting story. And we did an interview with him. It was aired on March the 20th. That's what I was looking for, the date. And one of the things that I talked to him about in that interview, the two main things, we talked for a whole hour, and then we did a deep dive interview with him for our premium podcast members, which he told his whole life story, which was so interesting. But two of the main things that we talked about in that interview, for your listeners who want to go back and listen to that, we talked about dog food and cat food, like the crappy stuff that we feed our animals. It's just like feeding your kids McDonald's every single day. If you're feeding, them really bad dog food. And we talked about preservatives. Then we talked about the rabies shot. And we talked about, how inconsequential it is, and how most animals really do not ever need a rabies shot, especially when you've got an animal that's like a dog or a cat that's purely an inside animal. They just go outside to do their business and that's it. And if they're a little puppy, and you can look in your area, how many reported cases of rabies there's been in the last 5 years. I mean, again, it's like vaccinating against a virus that doesn't exist. It's like with polio, vaccinating against a virus that doesn't exist. And yet we give these, and the rabies vaccines are the worst. They're the worst, most toxic. They have 3 different known carcinogens in them. And so many animals end up with what looks like rabies because it's a live virus shot. So they end up hypersalivating. They end up very aggressive. They end up with seizures. They end up very, very sick. So I'm glad you brought that up, Tanya. And it was a really great interview. And for those of you who are interested in becoming a premium podcast member that we have, you can go to drtenpenny.com, and there's a tab that says podcasts. And because they stay live for a week, and then they go into our area for our podcast members, and that just helps to support us. People always say, "What can we do to support you, Dr. T?" Well, becoming a podcast member would be great. And we have 4 different levels of podcasts for every budget and every time frame, things like that. So, but that interview was so good. And he actually gave us a free PowerPoint presentation and a couple of free links that went along with that to tell people where they could find a holistic homeopathic vet in their area, and that many of them do telemedicine. So you don't actually have to see someone in your area. You could actually do a telemedicine consultation about your animal by a homeopathic holistic veterinarian.
Yes, awesome. Yeah, I'm so glad that we brought this up as well, because, people can save themselves a lot of money not going to the vet every year, but you're going to have a healthier, happier pet. And, as a pet lover myself, once my sister started showing me the research, that's all I needed. And plus, I had 2 dogs that had severe reactions after their second shot. And I'm just like, you know what, this just doesn't seem right. One little pup, her whole face started to swell up, and literally, I thought I was going to lose her, and my sister and I were praying over her because she was so precious, right? But this is what these scoundrels are doing. And the rabies shot is just horrible. And in Canada, we cannot go to the US with our dog unless they have a rabies shot. And so people are forced, to do this and cause harm when rabies is not even an issue. What do we call it? A COVID vaccine? I don't know even anymore. But anyways, Dr. Sherri,
we don't call it a vaccine because it's not.
No.
It's a gene therapy bioweapon. So we always refer to it as the jab because that's what it is, or just the shot, because it is definitely not a vaccine. The COVID-19 stuff is not a vaccine. It doesn't keep you from getting sick. It doesn't stop transmission. It doesn't lower the hospitalization rate, and it actually harms you. And now we're seeing massive amounts of people dying from the shot. So we can literally say it actually also kills people.
Oh, 100%. When you mentioned bioweapon, I think that's something that people more and more are going to become familiar with and willing to say out loud, and that this is not a conspiracy theory. When you start seeing all these athletes drop and die, we've had 29 reported children in Canada who have died directly related to the jab. And wasn't it years ago, I'm trying to remember the name of the doctor who had said that if you had, say, a new medication or a vaccine at that point, that's how they referred to it, had come out and it had caused 50 deaths, they pulled it from the shelf. You would have seen commercials on television. And here we have hundreds of thousands of deaths.
Millions of deaths.
Millions. Okay. Yeah, and because it was somebody that was 80 years old or 72 years old in a care home, or they were struggling with cancer. They'd had cancer 20 years ago, and repeatedly they were recommended that they needed to take the jab and the boosters, and wouldn't you know that they had passed away, and that these pharmaceutical companies have zero liability. They're completely protected. And I think what we need to do once we get good people elected, and that's really a key to the campaigns that Action for Canada is having, is building these chapters nationwide so that we can take back our communities, one community at a time or a dozen at a time. We're having we're making very good progress working towards that. But we need to completely overturn.
You're doing amazing work. Amazing
Thank you.
work.
Yeah, we're having so much success right now as well. The other side is saying that we're the largest national Christian nationalist organization in Canada, and they're concerned in the LGBTQ group that that we're going to eliminate their agenda. And you bet we are. You've overstepped. They've come too far. You take your hands off our kids. What you do in your own bedroom, you just need to keep in your own bedroom. But on other levels, as we work towards bringing all of this awareness, right, that means that these massive industries that have had such a foothold are going to come crashing down. And the pharmaceutical industry is one of them. And that these individuals will need to be held personally liable. I believe that we're working towards that. And I'm excited to see the day, that we overturn this, and that only drugs that they can stand behind will make it to market. I think that's going to severely limit, the pharmaceutical medications that are out there. And you said something, and I picked that up, is that I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disorder over 20 years ago, and it was sort of an undiagnosed, and I've chosen to manage my health naturally. And they wanted to pump me through with these drugs, and I was like looking at the side effects, and I'm thinking, I'm not taking this. And thank God I didn't, right? Because I've seen other people who have, and exactly what you said. They started on other drugs and these side effects, and they've ended up again one of these toxic vessels walking around with severe health problems. And I've been able to manage to function and do a whole lot better than had I capitulated. And I love my doctor. She's a very kindly person, but she's just either not doing her homework, willfully blind, or just completely ignorant of what she's actually participating in.
And I would say all three of those things.
Mm-hmm.
Willfully blind, doesn't want to know, because if she knew, she'd have to do something different, and she doesn't know what that thing would be. Mm-hmm. And don't confuse personality with performance. You can love your doctor as a human being. They can be lovely. They can be a Christian. They can go to your church. Yeah, they can go to your rec center. That you could play basketball with them. You hope that they, if you have a young doctor, you hope that they'll marry one of your kids someday. That's personality. You can love them as a person and love their personality. But what they're not doing for you or what they are doing to you is performance. And whether you should just stay with a particular doctor or not should be based on their performance. Imagine that you disliked her. Imagine that you just did, she was toxic, caustic, condescended to you, wasn't very nice to you, was kind of rude to you. What would you say then? Would you stay around because you thought that she thought she was just lovely? And you would analyze what they were recommending to you more strongly because they didn't have this facade of nice. You know, and
Well,
so I'm just telling your listeners, it's really important to evaluate your medical caregivers based on their performance, what they're doing to you, what they're recommending. You know, could they get you off the drugs instead of putting you on more drugs? And the only thing that's going to change the pharmaceutical industry is to just say no. They've got too much money, too much power. They're never going to one day just go, oh, that was wrong. We need to stop being so focused on money. It's never going to happen.
It's exactly right.
Consumer driven to stay away from them.
Yeah. And I personally haven't even gone to see my doctor in years because of this and because she was promoting the COVID jabs. And my mom and I see her and mom will go and, oh, I'm going to have blood tests. And I'm like, why? They're not going to tell you what the truth. So we have another doctor who is very aware and who gives the proper medical advice and oversight. I want to just go back and talk about, you had mentioned with the childhood vaccines and how much, I think in milligrams, I'm not sure how you had measured that, the aluminum that children were receiving. And I can remember the World Health Organization having a massive meeting. I mean, there must have been 1,000 people in the room for this meeting. And one of the doctors, they didn't know they were being recorded, mentioned the aluminum and the damage that causes and the side effects. So can you briefly talk about that? And then what I'd like to do is I'd like to talk about some remedies. All right. I hate scaring the bejeebers out of people and saying, yes, okay, we know there's a problem. What can we do about this? How can we reverse some of the side effects that we're seeing in children? Is there help for children who have autism, autoimmune, psoriasis, ADHD? Is there solutions to this, Dr. Sherri?
Well, the aluminum, and what I did was I just made a list of all the vaccines and off the package insert, put it into a table like a spreadsheet and just listed all the vaccines and then all the ingredients across the top, and under the aluminum column, just added up the amount of aluminum that was in each one of the shots and then take it times the number of shots that they're given. So if there's, I'm just going to say 100 micrograms and you get that shot 5 times, well, that's 500 micrograms of aluminum that you're going to get. And it turned out to be, it's like 12,900 micrograms, which is almost 13 milligrams, and that doesn't mean as much to Americans because we're not on the metric system, but Canadians would really understand how much that is. And aluminum is a neurotoxin. It crosses the blood-brain barrier. It causes, it contributes to, I can't say causal, but it contributes to Alzheimer's, dementia, ADD, ADHD. It probably has an element that it also contributes to, like the mercury contributes to autism. So it's a very, very toxic to your kidneys. And in terms of solutions, it's everybody's fixated on this word now, detox. I do a Tuesday morning. It's called Coffee with Dr. T, and it's a live event on Tuesday morning. It's just a Zoom. It's just an open forum question and answer. And so on our most recent one on Tuesday, I think 5 people asked, how do I detox? I mean, people are really fixated on that right now because many of them are realizing that the environmental chemicals that they're being exposed to, they need to get it out of their body. They need to be in all of these COVID shots. They made a mistake. The people that are kind of waking up and going, wow, I thankfully I only had one of those. How do I detox? How do I get it out of my body? Well, for one thing, I've been saying this for 23 years that I've been talking about problems with vaccines. Once you vaccinate, you can't unvaccinate. You just can't. You can get some of the stuff out of your system and get a little bit healthier, but it doesn't return you to baseline. And that's particularly true with the COVID jabs. But things that you can do to get some of the aluminum out. I mean, there are some natural chelators. I mean, a chelator is something that takes out heavy metals. I mean, cilantro that you can get at the health food store, or you can actually eat it. Cilantro is a known very good chelator that takes out aluminum, mercury, cadmium, arsenic, other types of environmental heavy metals. Garlic is also a very, very good chelator. It helps to get things out. MSM, which MSM, it's an elemental sulfur. So it's kind of like the sulfur that's in your eggs. And yes, if you're allergic to sulfa drugs, you can take MSM because an MSM helps to chelate out because it increases the amount of glutathione in your system. So those are some natural chelators. And we promote on our website a product that's called, that's from a company called Touchstone. That's a spray. That's a zeolite spray. That's a huge chelator. I mean, it grabs hold of every heavy metal, every toxic. It's called persistent organic pollutants. It grabs hold of that. It's safe to take if you're pregnant. You can give it to, if you're nursing, you can give it to your animals to get toxicities out of your animals. And it's a spray. And if you go to our website, when you go, there's a bottle there. It says Pure Body Extra, and it's actually a spray. It's underneath the shop tab. And if your first bottle of that, and yes, they do ship to Canada. Your first bottle, if you go to our tab there, I think it says this third one down. It's a zeolite metal detox, and then right over to the side where it says metal detox, or right underneath it says 82% off. Or you can get the zeolite spray plus the fulvic minerals that helps to chelate the stuff out of your gut, and you get 82% off. And so that's, if you just go, you can go underneath the shop tab, and when you click on at the top over there, it says buy zeolite detox. If you go to that tab, it has lots of videos, lots of instruction, lots of background science about how these products have been tested scientifically to get that out of your body. So we really believe that the zeolite spray and the fulvic mineral liquid drops are two of the best things that you can use to get out of your system. And people will say things to me, Tanya, things like, how long do I have to take this stuff? It's like, well, when you find the place on the planet that's a non-toxic place where you can go and live and not have chemtrails flying over you and not have polluted water and polluted air, then I suppose you can stop taking it. So it's just a natural kind of chelating thing that you can take for a really long time. And you can get it on drtenpenny.com underneath the shop tab for zeolite and for the fulvic minerals. They actually have a combination. If you get the two of them together, you get a bigger discount. And so it's really, really good stuff. And then the cilantro, garlic, all of those, both of those things are natural things that you can get from your local health food store to help get rid of the stuff out of your system.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. And this people will know this is a pre-record, and we'll be sure that when we launch this program, in the description, we'll include many of these links that you've mentioned. And when you were just talking about the chemtrails, again, it's a conspiracy theory, many people would say, but there's a gal named Kristen Megan, and she's just a recent whistleblower, I believe, from the military in the United States, because she was witness to the fact that there were these toxic chemicals that they were putting in planes. And so she couldn't believe it. So then she started to test the chemicals. She started to test the air and the ground. And she 100% had gone to her supervisor, and he said, you're not looking too well. Maybe you're not feeling too well. Maybe you should go to a psychologist, and that we could arrange that for 90 days. And so she knew instantly, and she's a single mom. I've got to look a little bit more into that, but she was 100% exposing, that this is going on. So I'm sure people will hear more about that. I sent it to a reporter at the Epoch Times, a gentleman that I know. I said, can you look into this? Do a story on it, because people want to snub anyone that talks about the potential of the chemtrails, and that there are chemicals that they actually are putting into the atmosphere. these individuals behind this, they have to live in this environment as well. It just doesn't make sense to me, Dr. Tenpenny, with what they're doing. But these are crazy lunatics. I keep saying we need to bring out the white jackets and lock them all up because
lock them up.
Yeah, right. We could start doing a chant right now together. That's just been amazing. I'm just so happy that you've been on the program. Is there anything else that you would like to mention or let our viewers know?
Really just if you go to our website, it's very dense with information. You can find out things about the 7 different podcasts that I do every week when the schedule is. We'd be grateful if you become a member, if you can look at all the different things we have there. And I'm always encouraging people to just go spend some time on our site and just look at the graphics. I mean, honestly, Diane does the most incredible assets, the most incredible graphics for things that she does I told her last night, I said, I'm going to take all of your graphics and make a magazine out of them because they're just so beautiful. She's just an incredible designer. And so, while you're there, please sign up for our newsletter. It comes out, I believe, twice a week, Mondays and Fridays. On Fridays, we have a thing, it's called Friday Favorites, where we have just like 2 or 3 products. They're right there in the left there. That's the schedule on the front, on our homepage. That's that green box. That's the schedule of what our podcast schedule is. On Fridays, we have Friday Favorites. So we get like special discounts. Everybody that's a premium podcast member, there's 4 different tiers there. So that premium podcast members get deep discounts on everything we do, including the webinars, and they get lifetime access to a lot of things. So we do our best because we really, really are grateful for the support that people give us. We do our best to give back in equal amounts because I use this expression, I say it a lot, that, this expression where they say it takes a village to raise a child. Well, it takes a village to run my operation. I mean, there's lots of things going on, and that's just one of my several companies of what we're doing. So we really appreciate your support. We appreciate your prayers. If you really want to pray something specific for Dr. Tenpenny, pray for stamina because I run on fumes a lot. Pray for some stamina and that, things will continue to move forward and go well as we try to do great things for humanity in this next year.
Thank you. And you really are. And that's why I was so excited. It took a long time to get you on the show. You're such a busy lady. And we're so grateful that you spent this time with us today. I feel that this is going to be very valuable information for our viewers. And I'm sure it's going to go viral. So thank you. Love you so much. And I look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you so much, Tanya. God bless.
You too. All right. Wow. Wasn't that an amazing interview? I'm really going to encourage you. We're going to be uploading the video of this interview tomorrow. So please make sure that you check the Empower Hour page and share. Share with all the parents that you know, all the young parents, all the up and comings, and let's get this information out there. And be sure, if you want more information on holistic and natural healings and how to be well and get well, go and check out Dr. Tenpenny's page. All right, terrific. All right, Trenzio, can you bring up the image for next week's guest? So next week we have Tom Harris joining us again, and we are going to be talking more about climate change and even the effect of what they're teaching our children in the schools. You know how we're addressing the Marxist agenda, and that includes this radical LGBTQ agenda. It includes the climate change propaganda as well as the critical race theory. And we're hoping that as we're pulling down this LGBTQ agenda and exposing and bringing awareness, we want that eradicated from the schools. And at the same time, we hope to see a collapse in all of the rest of it, including the climate change. So we're going to talk about what's happening within our schools with climate change. We're going to talk about the 15-minute cities, and I think it's going to be a really great show. All right, super. And Trenzio, could you bring the Bible verse up? All right. I wish above all things that you may prosper and be in health, even as your soul prospers. So that's a short and sweet message tonight. I thought it was very timely as we talk about health. I pray that the Lord would give you good health. I pray that he would bless you. And I just thank you for joining us tonight. I look forward to seeing you next week. God bless you, and God bless Canada.